do you understand this picture?
Yes.
What is that?
This is the gastric.
Quadrant.
And division and hypogastric.
The quadrants of the abdomen.
Lumbar and
So what is the importance of dividing the abdomen into 9 quadrants by these lines? What are these lines? The midclavicular, transpyloric and transtubercular planes divide the abdominal region into 9 quadrants. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 quadrants, 9 areas.
Yes.
So why we are dividing this abdomen area into 9 quadrants? To understand which area which abdominal viscera is situated. So if you know which organ or which viscera is situated in which quadrant of the abdomen, if you have any complaints, for example, if a patient complains of pain here, the right iliac fossa, then we can, if we know the structures present in the right iliac fossa, then we can come to a conclusion maybe the pain is originating from that organ. For example, appendix is there. So if the patient complains of pain here, we can say that the pain may be originating from the appendix. We will get some orientation towards the diagnosis of the disease. So that is the reason why we are supposed to know the 9 quadrants of the abdomen and the position of different abdominal viscera within these quadrants. Okay. So these lines divide the abdomen into, so these are the mid-clavicular lines, transpyloric and transtubercular planes, dividing the abdomen into 9 quadrants. What are they? Below the ribs, so there is the right hypochondrium, epigastrium,
and
left hypochondrium,
Yes.
hypochondrium, okay?
Yeah.
And then you have the lumbar,
Lumbar.
right
Left
and
and right.
left lumbar, and central is the umbilical area, okay? And then you have iliac area.
Iliac.
This is right iliac fossa,
And
left iliac fossa. This is
Hypogastrium.
epigastrium, this is hypogastrium. Am I clear?
Yes.
So these are the 9 quadrants of the abdomen. So now let's come to the today's topic. So we are studying the most dilated part of the gastrointestinal tract. Okay, so that is the stomach. Okay, so as we already discussed, so we should know which quadrants this stomach is present. The stomach is not present in just one area. It's the big organ.
Yes.
Okay, it is distributed. It is distributed in 3 areas. Okay, the position of the stomach is in these 3 areas. What are they? Left hypochondrium, epigastrium, and umbilicus. That is the position of the stomach. Position of the stomach. You can see it here. See, this is the stomach. Okay. So stomach, what is the position of the stomach? It is present in the epigastrium, umbilical, and left hypochondriac regions or quadrants of the abdomen. So that is the position of the stomach. So now let's move on to the other features. That means the anatomy of the stomach. So stomach, as already explained, it is the most dilated part of the gastrointestinal tract, situated, you can say, at the between the esophagus and the duodenum. From between what? The esophagus ends, the stomach begins, okay, and ends at the duodenum. So that is the situation of the stomach between your esophagus and the duodenum. As already told you, the position is in the epigastric, umbilical, and left hypochondriac regions. Okay. So what is the shape of the? If you look at this, this is the model of the stomach. Okay. So it is almost a J shape. You know the English letter J.
Yes.
It is J shaped, or you can say the pyriform shape. The shape is not actually constant. It changes. The shape of the stomach is not constant. It changes whether it is empty or full, and even if depending upon the position of the person, the shape varies. So shape to be, what is that? In a cadaver, if you observe, in a cadaver, in a dead body, if you observe, it appears like the J shape. Okay. So the shape depends on the content,
Yes.
the position of the person. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So now, the size and all, so nothing much of importance. So it is about roughly they say about 25 centimeter long. Okay, And when you look into the position of the stomach, it is not exactly anterior, slightly it is shifted, okay, slightly upper side. So anterior superior we say, and then posterior inferior, not exactly like this, vertical, okay, slight there is transversity of this stomach. And the capacity depends on the, again, for example, in kids,
Yes.
so the capacity is less. So in adults, the capacity is more. So roughly about 1500 to, you can say 2500 ml is the capacity of the stomach. Okay.
Yes.
So now, before getting into the further the details, the anatomy of the stomach, you should be knowing so that you can compare the anatomy with the function. Okay. So what are the functions of the stomach?
It is crushing the food.
Yes, very good.
And
So it properly mixes all the food with the gastric juice as well as the hydrochloric acid and churns it into a paste like what is that consistency of the food, which is easily propelled into the further part of the gastrointestinal tract. So that paste like structure is called as chyme. Yes. So that is propelled further into the duodenum and then to the small intestine, which is made easier for the absorption. Okay. Yes, that is very most important. Yes. So it helps in churning the foods. Yes. Then only one function. Digestion. Okay. So have
secretion.
yeah, secretion. Yeah, secretion of gastric juice as well as the hydrochloric acid, the protective in nature also. Okay. Yeah. I didn't get you. What?
Temporary storage.
Yeah, temporary storage, and very importantly is it controls the expulsion of the chyme into the duodenum, so that it is absorbed properly in the further part of the gastrointestinal. It will not empty directly at one time. The small bolus, okay, so that when it is completely absorbed, then the next stage of the source, what is that emptying time is not just sudden. It takes about 3 to 4 hours to empty whole of the stomach after you take the food. So it takes 3 to 4 hours to empty the stomach. So that we call it as gastric emptying time. Is it not? So the control of the movement of the chyme from the stomach into the duodenum. That is the one more important function of this stomach. Okay. So when you look into this, the structure of the anatomy of the stomach, then we can understand the function in a better way. For example, we said that the stomach helps in mixing or the chewing, churning of the food and converting it into a paste-like structured chyme. So how exactly, what structure is there? Which part of the stomach, anatomy of the stomach, which helps in this function? If you look into the structure of the stomach and compare it with other parts of the gastrointestinal tract, so this stomach is having one extra layer of muscle coat. Is it not? So that helps in the special functioning of the stomach when you compare it to the small intestine or the esophagus. So everywhere you find 2 layers of muscular coat, right? The circular and longitudinal. But here you have one more extra, that is oblique layer, and the muscle coat is very thick here. So this thicker 3 coat of muscle will help in the churning of the food and converting it into a the chyme. And even when you look into the, as you were explaining, the capacity, so 1500 to 250 ml, 2500 ml, and its storage. So if you look into the interior of the stomach, the mucous membrane or the mucosa of the stomach is, what is that? Folded. It is folded. So mainly the longitudinal mucosal fold, what we call them as rugae. You know?
Yes.
Rugae. So that will help in the distension of the stomach and storage of the stomach. So like that there are, if you have to compare the anatomy with the function, so that you will be understanding it better way. Okay? Yes. So now coming to the proper stomach, actually, so the stomach is having different features. So what are the features of the stomach? So it has 2 openings or 2 ends. Okay? So one opening where the esophagus enters into the stomach, and the other is the stomach into the duodenum. Okay? The esophageal end of the stomach, we call it as cardiac end. What we call it as? We call it as cardiac end, and this is the end which is opening into the duodenum, we call it as the pyloric end. Okay? So 2 ends are 2 openings. Okay? And then you have the stomach itself, we have two curvatures. Can you see this? One or borders, you can say. This is what we call it as the lesser curvature or the lesser border or the left border, right border, and then you have the greater curvature or the big curvature or the left border. Are you following?
Yes.
Two borders, left and right. And then surfaces. What surface you expect? You expect, as I said, anterior and posterior, or you can say anterior superior and posterior inferior, whatever you can say. So better you use the word anterior superior and then posterior inferior. Okay. So these are the features. So you have two ends, two borders, two surfaces. Okay. And then so this stomach is divided into four parts. Okay. So what are the parts of the stomach? If you look into the picture here, you can see this is the picture of the stomach. So it is divided into the fundus, the body, and then you have the antrum, pyloric antrum, and the pyloric canal. Or together these two we call it as pyloric part. So altogether how many parts? You can say 3 or 4 parts. Okay, what are they? The fundus, the body, the pyloric antrum, and the pyloric canal. Okay. So now the fundus is the upper dome shaped part of the stomach which extends into the hypochondrium, left hypochondrium. Okay. So if you draw a horizontal line from the cardiac end or left end of your the esophagus, end of the stomach, and then join it to the greater curvature, the horizontal line. The part above is the fundus, where usually the food will not enter. Usually you have gas present in that area. Okay, when you take the picture of the X-ray of the abdomen, you can observe that the gas under the diaphragm on the left side. It is mainly because of the gas in the stomach, the fundus of the stomach. Okay. And now you one more important line here. So there is the area of maximum concavity or the permanent, you can say as a depression there in the lesser curvature. That maximum concavity is called as incisura angularis. Okay, and if you draw a vertical line from there towards the greater curvature, okay, that is the line. So now the area between these two lines is called as the body of the stomach, and the rest of the stomach beyond this line is called as pylorus. Okay. So in this pylorus you have two parts. Most tubular part of the pylorus is called as pyloric canal, whereas rest of this is called as pyloric antrum.
Okay.
Am I clear?
Yes.
Am I clear? What are the 4 parts?
Yes.
Fundus, body, antrum, and canal. Pyloric antrum and pyloric canal. So these are the 4 parts of the stomach. 4 parts of the stomach. So histologically also, yeah.
This is this part depends on what function or.
Yeah, that's what I was talking now. So histologically, if you observe, microscopically, if you observe, so these parts are slightly different. For example, you find plenty of mucous glands here in the pyloric part.
Okay.
Whereas if you see the fundic part and the body part, more of the acid secreting cells. Are you following?
Yes, yes.
That is some function. Anatomical differences is there in the structure microscopically. Okay. Yeah. So this is about the 4 parts of the stomach. And now come back to the 2 ends. One end I said the esophageal end or the cardiac end. So very important here, these 2 ends of the the stomachs, they actually control these 2 orifices. Okay, openings. So the cardiac end where the esophagus is ending, okay, and then begins the area of the stomach. Okay. So this esophageal end or the cardiac end of the stomach is always closed.
Yeah,
the tone of the circular muscle coat there actually keeps this orifice closed always. Okay. When the peristaltic wave comes, okay, then it opens and then emptying the contents from the esophagus into the stomach. But when you actually observe anatomically, when you observe this part of the esophagus or the end of the stomach under microscope, you don't find extra circular muscle layer just when you compare it with the pyloric end. So there is no sphincter actually. No sphincter actually. That's why I am saying the esophageal end is more of, what is that, functional sphincter rather than anatomical sphincter. There is no anatomical sphincter. It is only the functional or the physiological sphincter. Are you following? So when you observe structurally, you don't see any sphincter, but still, so it controls the orifice. Okay, only functional.
Only in stomach or even.
I am talking about this cardiac end. That is a functional sphincter.
Okay.
Whereas if you observe the pyloric canal area, this pyloric sphincter, which controls the opening of the stomach into the duodenum, there is thickening of the circular muscle fiber.
Doctor, what about upper sphincter? Is it appear anatomical?
It depends. You should. They definitely, the sphincter means usually there should be, what is that?
Okay.
A thickened
Just like
circular
here.
muscle.
Okay.
Okay. So if you observe here, see here. So this is the pyloric sphincter where the muscle is there.
Anatomical it's appear.
Yeah.
Yes.
So both anatomically and functional there is a sphincter here in the pyloric sphincter. Okay, which controls the opening of, supplied by both autonomic nerves. Okay, which controls the opening of the stomach into the duodenum. Am I clear? So the pyloric sphincter and the esophageal, what is that? Cardiac end of the stomach. Pyloric end and then the cardiac end of the stomach. Now come to these two borders. So I said the lesser curvature, okay, or the right border. If you observe, it is small compared to the greater. That's why the name lesser and greater. One important fact about this, what is that lesser curvature is
The
presence
the
of
notch,
this
the notch.
or angular notch, which is permanent.
Depression.
Okay, so more concave part of this lesser curvature. So that is
Okay.
angular notch or incisor angularis, you can say. Okay.
Yes.
So now come to the greater curvature, which begins from the left end of your cardiac end of the stomach or left part of the cardiac stomach and rises up, forms the fundus, and then the greater curvature ends at the pyloric. So which is the bigger one. Okay, or also called as the left border of the stomach. Left border of the stomach. Yes.
Sphincter, as you said, it is functionally sphincter. It is not close.
Well, I didn't get you what?
Esophageal constrictor. It's not close because it's functionally.
لا closed functionally closed.
يبقى مين موجود الشكل؟
بس ما
I
بوصل
understand.
ارجع المعلومه بس
The second picture
ما
please.
في بس الفانكشن حقه
يعني ما تقفل.
شوف
الفانكشن موجود
شوف
مو
مين
anatomy.
موجود هذه مين موجود anatomical زي اللي
It is functional sphincter. Why? Because you don't find any thickening of the circular muscle fiber. So when you observe the pyloric end, there is definite thickening of the muscle fiber. It looks like anatomically sphincter is there. But esophageal end you don't find the lower end of the esophagus. Okay, but the tone itself, the tone the tone is always there even in the rest. So that itself keeps the opening closed, preventing the regurgitation of the stomach from the stomach into the esophagus. Only when the peristaltic wave comes in the esophagus, it opens actually ahead of peristaltic wave reaching the lower end of esophagus. So then it opens and the food enters from the esophagus to the stomach, and then again it closes. Clear?
Yes.
It opens only when there is peristaltic wave approaching it.
The esophageal sphincter, does it have nervous innervation?
It is there. All the muscular coat of the esophagus is supplied by nerves. So that is Auerbach's plexus of nerves. Yeah. Without that, how can it work? Okay, so what we were talking about the borders or the curvatures, right? The lesser curvature and then the greater curvature. And now come to the surfaces. Okay, I said anterior and posterior surfaces. So anterior surface, much of it is related to the anterior abdominal wall. So you should look into the relations of the anterior surface of the stomach and then the posterior surface of the stomach, posterior inferior surface.
Okay.
Or you can say the posterior relations, we even call them as the stomach bed on which the stomach is sleeping. Okay, like so the structures forming the stomach bed. So what it means? It means the posterior relations. The posterior relations of the stomach, structures forming the stomach bed. So usually examine it is asked like this. Name the structures forming the stomach bed. So don't confuse. Stomach bed means it is the structures posterior to the stomach or the posterior relations of the stomach. Okay. So as there are two surfaces, you should be knowing the relations of these two surfaces. the anterior surface and then the posterior surface.